Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo. The Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Joe Schmo Sports Show. You're here with Clint, Dom, and Dre as usual, and today we have some incredible guests coming in the show, some very accomplished athletes, very pro athletes, former, because you haven't competed in a while.
No,
right?
Last time I competed was October 2016 in China. And
Okay.
Actually, I haven't ridden in 15 months.
Yeah,
now.
we'll talk about that too. So we have Mr. Josh Perry, former pro BMX athlete, and Miss Jackie Lauricella.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not butchering that.
No, that was
okay.
that
All right,
was perfect.
cool. We're gonna just pick their brains about professional sports and see what they've learned and what they've had to overcome. And Josh's story is incredible, and Jackie has been there for a lot of it.
Well, hold on, time
Yeah.
out. Jackie, you're a professional athlete too?
Yes.
Or a former professional athlete?
I would call it like an elite level athlete.
Elite.
Professional
I like it.
in a sense that I had sponsors. And
Elite
like,
sounds better.
Yeah,
And-
but I was like a two-time
Sounds cooler.
U.S. national team member for Taekwondo.
Okay.
Taekwondo.
Yep.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So don't pick a fight.
Yeah,
Got it.
don't fuck
little bit of a
with
ninja.
Jackie.
It-
A little bit of a ninja. I'd say
Yeah.
you're an elite level ninja
Yes.
from what you
Yes.
just said.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so how are you guys?
Doing fantastic.
Yeah?
We're actually getting ready to move, which is
Yeah.
sad news. to
Sad
some of the new
news.
relationships I've been building
Yeah.
in the last few weeks. But for us, it's great because we just had this realization about a year and a half ago when I was like, oh, BMX doesn't dictate where I live anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to live here to train. And then my family's up north, and I'm not trying to move to the Northeast. I
No.
don't think Jackie will survive a winter there.
No, I won't.
It's too cold.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's
Yeah.
just it's not worth it. And then her family's in Florida, so I was like, well, let's be near family. Mm-hmm. Why not live on the beach? All right.
All right, so where are
Nice.
you going again?
So it's the Daytona Beach area.
Got it.
It's a little bit mainland in a little city called Port Orange, where
Okay.
I grew up. Yeah. So it's
Nice.
That's terrible.
Yep, moving
Moving
back,
back
home.
home.
And it's not terrible at all. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to be 10 minutes from the beach.
Mm.
Like, it's an hour away from Orlando, 3 hours from Miami. Like, it's a really great central location.
Nice.
All of that sounds great. I love the beach. It's my happy place.
Same.
Yeah.
I hate that it's like a huge ordeal in North Carolina. And I say huge ordeal, and everybody's, it's a weekend or it's an hour
It's
and
a-
a half.
it's a
It's
day
not a
trip.
big deal.
Yeah.
And like, for me, I'm like, that's too much. If I have to pack a cooler
Yeah.
and like a suitcase and like, it's way too much for
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
So just throw a cooler in the Jeep or whatever
It's
and
just keeping
haul
a
ass.
bathing suit and a
Yeah.
towel in the back of my car, and then if I have
Goals.
a spare hour, like I go and hang out at the beach.
I grew up in Virginia Beach, and
Yeah.
that was, I had board shorts, my surfboard, my towel.
All the time.
Gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you just leave it in the back of your car, and then you're like, all right, I've got a minute. I'm going to go and hang out,
Man.
lunch
Exactly.
break, whatever. Yeah.
That's the dream eventually. That's
Yes.
like a
Yeah.
retirement kind of thing for me.
The fact that I live so far from the beach, though, it means anytime I go to the ocean, like as soon as you start to smell it, it just
It's good
it
times.
feels like home.
Yeah.
And you just like all the memories and all the good home feelings just start
Yes.
come rushing back.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
Smell of salt air.
yeah, but there is a difference though in going back to live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in Florida. It's nice because it's not the seasonal. There definitely is a tourist season,
Sure.
but it's not the way it is in North Carolina or Virginia Beach, where in the winter months it's dead or
yeah.
not there, or
So-
only like weird locals that don't want you around anyways. So it's endless summer, like perpetual summer, and it's not super reliant on the tourist industry. It's very thriving and busy, even in the winter months. Yeah.
So did you start your Taekwondo career there?
I did. Yeah.
Orange?
So
Yeah.
when I was growing up there, I started when I was about 8 years old, and my dad owns his own business, and it's like a outdoor pest control business, and where he used to go and pick up his like chemicals that he puts on people's lawn was right across the street from this Taekwondo school. And I had been doing like rec league soccer, and I was very aggressive, and he essentially was like
Discipline, Danielson.
yeah, like my 7-year-old is slide tackling people, and I don't even know where she learned that. So
Genetic.
between that and like all the pent up energy I had as a younger kid and getting recess taken away from me. He was like, "You're getting chubby. We're going to put you in this sport and it's going to fix all of our problems." And then it just clicked. I started in July and my first tournament was in November, and then I didn't stop for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So U.S. national team?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I made junior national team once, and I
Okay.
went to junior world championships in
Okay.
Turkey. And then I made some like Florida based teams and stuff like that. If you won the state championship and then you went to this fight off, they would sponsor you or they would send you. I got sent to US Open a couple of times which is nice. So you don't have to pay for the flight
Sure.
and things,
Yeah.
and got sent to some training camps down in like Puerto Rico. And then the second time I made the adult senior national team, and they took us out to Spain for the Spanish Open. So that was really fun. Yeah.
So why Taekwondo? Just because of the convenience of where it was and just that timing?
I think it started that way, but it clicked for me so easily. I was very natural. I didn't have to work very hard at it. And I think my parents noticed, okay, there's something here. And the excitement and the adrenaline and everything else. So in Taekwondo, it's fully padded, but it's also full contact after a certain age. So once you're a black belt and you're over 14, you can knock each other out, and that means you win the fight. But
I was just going to ask, was it fighting competition? Because I've also seen that there's the show competitions as well, where
I
you're
do not
doing
do
a
that.
routine and that sort of thing.
Oh,
You
yeah,
don't do
okay.
I
that.
do not do the second.
Choreographed show stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And there's pumse or forms and then sparring. And the second, my coach's rule, I came from a very traditional school. He essentially told me that I had to do forms at tournaments until I got my black belt, and then I was able to make my own choice. And then after that, I was like,
Sparring.
not doing it ever
Yeah.
again. Yeah, it's like a weird gymnastics thing. You go and you perform in front of judges, and they score it out of 10, and it's very subjective. And sometimes I'd win, and sometimes I wouldn't. It's just super annoying and very formal. You have to enter the ring a very certain way. And
Some people
yeah.
use different weapons.
Yeah.
Some people have this very slow.
She already said she
version.
was
Others are
aggressive, so we should
acrobatic.
We
But
should have
no,
guessed
it's
it wasn't that.
I did not have
Yeah.
the patience for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
it was,
doubt.
I was definitely kicking people in the face.
Yeah,
Like,
no joke.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So
good.
normally, I know, like, from everybody that I know that does martial arts, they don't just do one. You might not specialize in anything else but Taekwondo, but what else do you do? What else do you practice?
I have done a lot of jujitsu stuff, some judo, a touch of kung fu.
Ooh,
I
that sounds
tried boxing a little
Ooh.
bit, but I don't like it. I don't like getting punched in the face at all. And it's hard to just like repeatedly, especially I have short arms, and it was just not, it was not a good
Like a
fit.
T-
To punch.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Like kickboxing?
Yeah.
Mixed martial arts?
I've tried it. There's too many things to worry about. It's definitely a huge adjustment. In Taekwondo, you're worried about people kicking you.
Sure.
They kick you in the body. They kick you in the head. All of a sudden, you get into an MMA cage or ring, and you have to worry about them kicking you anywhere, punching you anywhere, taking you down. It's
Yeah,
just my
ground
brain
game.
feels
Elbow.
like explode.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Missions.
I could
yeah.
see liking it and practicing it, but it would take a really long adjustment.
Now, do you still train and compete?
I don't know. I retired actually in my last 2 years of college. It was because I studied to be an athletic trainer, and it's a specialized degree. And they only let 25 people a year into the program, and they suggest that you don't have a job when you do it, because you have to do 20 hours a week of volunteering on top of your class schedule, which is a full class schedule.
Volunteering for like the sports teams and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Where'd you go
your
to school?
internship hours at University of Central Florida.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah. The fake national champions, those guys.
I think it
Y'all
counts.
had a great
I think it
season. That's all
counts.
I know.
We had a good couple of seasons.
very good
but,
couple
you
of
know,
seasons,
It's
yeah.
not like
Yeah.
we were playing Alabama, but
Sure.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, they've been solid though.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm not hating it all.
Yeah.
Like, it was impressive. I was there in 2013 and to 15, where we had Blake Bortles and we were just starting to get good.
Yeah.
But that year is when that coach got booted and they put in the new coach.
Yeah, he was really good in college. Blake Bortles.
Yeah,
he
he was
really
great
good in
in
college.
college.
Not so
Yeah.
much in the
There was a
pros.
lot of quarterbacks.
Yeah,
but that's not what we're talking
that's
about
fair.
today.
That's
Yeah.
very true. So did you compete in college? Did they have a
No, I essentially
intramural or anything like that?
I wish that would be really. Some schools do, and they have like collegiate teams and things like that.
Did y'all have like a fight club then, like an underground kind of thing?
Like, meet me in my garage. That's what we do on Saturdays. That would
Meet me in the basement of the rec center,
right.
right?
That would have been really cool.
Look, I've got plenty of space here.
I would have liked that. Would have been
That'd be
awesome.
fun.
Yeah, I'll come to that.
So
yeah.
Josh, you have like built-in bodyguard. This is nice.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And she just tries to attack me every now and then.
She also takes care of you if you need it,
Drop
right?
kicks my phone
So-
out of my hand. And
Right.
shatters.
Oh, it worked out okay.
If you drop something, chances are she'll probably catch it before it hits the ground anyway, because she is a trained elite ninja.
Yeah, she's also clumsy.
So true. All
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you stumbled into some of those kicks.
I mean, my dad used to make fun of me for the same thing. I would run into walls and trip over stuff in everyday life, and then he'd be like, "You'd be like a duck in water in the ring," and then you'd step out. Like we were on a huge world stage for the Junior World Championships, and the rings were elevated, and it was live streamed, and it was so cool. And there was like steps up to the ring, and after the
pretty dope.
fight, I won, and it was great. And then I fell down the stairs.
Oh my god! It's like graduation. It's like
Yeah,
tripping up the
exactly.
stairs on graduation.
Like, just completely missed a step.
Oh,
and,
that's
like,
terrible.
Yeah,
That's
my
incredible.
coach like caught me and he
Oh,
was
well,
like,
that's
"Are you
good.
okay?" I was
Is that
like,
common with athletes? Because I remember being younger, like my mom would always make fun of me. She's like, "You have better coordination when you're on your bike than you do your feet."
I think it's anyone that has ADD.
Your mind's going a million miles an hour. You're like,
I used
what
to
what
trip
am I
over
doing
so
next?
many things, but
Yeah.
on my bike, I was.
Unless
Yeah.
you're really focused, then
Yeah.
it's just you're gonna fall.
I'm glad you brought up ADD, ADHD.
Yeah.
Because I'm didn't get diagnosed with that until I was an adult. And when I was a kid, about the same age that you went into Taekwondo, my parents put me into swimming.
Yeah.
And I also reached that elite junior national team level
Yeah.
as well with that. And when I was swimming, I was hyper focused. It was the only I had to do it to be able to get to sleep. I would practice before school, after school. Nowadays, you don't see nearly as many kids going into sports at that early age and getting to those highly competitive levels because the kids get diagnosed with ADHD and they start taking medication and they don't put them into sports to work off the energy anymore.
Right.
And now kids, they're sedentary, there's more obesity, they stay at home, they don't get out.
Get handed an iPad.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
so-
think so much of that is suppressing people's like talent out there. Like,
Oh, yeah.
just
I would agree.
medicating a child. Because my mom put me on Ritalin when I was in like fourth grade or so for like maybe a couple months, and then she was like, "No, take them off. It just turned me into a zombie." But then I've worked with Dr. Daniel Amen, who does SPECT imaging.
Yeah.
So he diagnosed me with severe ADHD, but then he was like, "This is a super talent. This ability you have to focus on so many things, but then to be hyper focused allows you to
yeah.
do what you do upside down spinning within 3 seconds."
Right.
And so it's just, I think, a perspective that most parents these days, and I'm assuming I'm not a parent, but what I observe, it's like the patience.
It's annoying.
It's just, here, go do something, or like, here's a medication.
Yeah.
It's easy,
Yeah.
rather than let's put this energy into a sport,
Yeah.
or music, like
There-
constructive.
There is a benefit to the medication because you can utilize it in a targeted way, but you can't use it as behavior control.
Yeah.
Like
It's totally
okay,
different.
Targeted way, you need to study, you need to excel at these classes because this is part of you growing and learning and achieving your potential over here. But then with the rest of your time, you need to be outside running. My son, who's got a pretty severe form of ADHD, he has this medication, so he doesn't just completely shut down his classroom because his behavior
Yeah.
can do
Yeah.
that. And that's even as a 7th, 8th grader. But after school, it's to the soccer field.
Yep.
And he's competing at really high levels for NCFC. That's how we balance it. We're not trying to over-medicate and utilize it for behavior control, but we understand that we have to just so he can function in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Right.
But I don't know if there's an increase in that nowadays because of devices always being in people's
Yeah.
faces, and it almost train children from a young age to need that high
Yep.
level of stimulation
Yeah,
all
just
the
to
time.
keep their brain
Yeah.
focused. Exactly. Because anytime they're away from the screen, it's the change of behavior is
We've seen it,
incredible.
Dom, as parents of teenagers. We've seen it.
Well, I
for
see it
sure.
in myself.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
adults.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine
Yeah, no doubt.
as a child.
Yeah.
I think parenting has changed a lot too,
Oh.
and it's just what like social norms are. I feel like everybody was in some kind of rec sport as a child when
for
I
sure.
was a kid, and now it's Timmy doesn't like sports, and it's like, how does Timmy know? He's 5.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
why isn't he
Yeah.
playing soccer?
Timmy doesn't
or
know what's good for
basketball?
Timmy.
Yeah. Like, try
Timmy-
some t-ball, Timmy. Come on now.
That's
Yeah.
we've had all of our children in sports. Even
Yeah.
if they just getting them into team
many
sports and
lessons.
teaching them how to cooperate with other kids.
Yep.
Because if they don't, how are they going to learn that?
Yeah.
And so much of our modern workforce is based upon working in teams.
Yeah.
If you haven't worked in teams as a
Oh
child,
gosh.
how are you going to be successful at doing that
Boy.
as an adult?
Or just discipline and being able to hold your focus,
Yeah.
even
My
if
goodness.
it's bored. Oh, are we doing this drill again? Yeah, you're going to do it, and you're going to try your hardest. That's what's important.
Yep.
And-
Delayed gratification. One
Yeah.
of the biggest things
Yes.
I've learned through sports that I don't see enough today is like this sense of working towards something that you're not sure is going to happen or the
Right.
outcome you want is going to occur, but then you work and then you experience it. And I
Yeah.
feel like that
rather than in
art
return.
has just diminished.
Oh, it's all about instant return these days. What have you done for me now?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, not even lately.
Well,
it's
the
now.
the other thing that I see is that to your point, Josh, is that kids, if they're not immediately excellent at something,
Oh, yeah.
they give up.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no
You see it in the transfer portal, bro.
exactly.
NCAA.
There's just no concept of, hey, I'm not any good at this now because this is my first time doing it. So if I like it and I enjoy it and I want to get better at it, I need to practice it. They think that if I'm not good at it, it's just something that I hate and I'm never going to try it again.
Josh is doing that a lot lately.
Yeah.
With
How's
golf.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. to be fair, one, the first thing that I ever learned from Clint playing golf is hard. Two, I also hate golf, and I don't ever really want to pick up a club again.
To me is like when I find something that I'm interested in, whether it be golfing or bowling,
Yeah.
I get into it.
Sure.
I start watching tutorials. I spend a lot of time trying to learn it, practice, and then when I have a good round, I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then when I'm putting the work in,
Yeah.
and then it just, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I just forgot how to do whatever it was. I get frustrated. And my friend told me the other day, he's like, that means you're getting better.
Yep.
Because I'm
exactly.
not
'Cause
stopping.
you expect more.
I'm just going
Yeah.
out and going out.
Well,
and-
all it takes, Josh, is one shot per round.
Oh, we talked
and
about
it gets
that,
you
yeah.
through
First
Jackie.
That's the first few times you go out. But then if you only hit one good shot after about 3 years of playing golf, then you're just like, I don't ever
Dude,
want to
it
pick
doesn't
these
matter
up
for
again.
me.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
could go and just play terrible, and
Yeah.
then the 17th hole get one shot, and I'm like, we're doing this again.
We're doing
like,
this
next
again
week,
tomorrow
or
because I can do
tomorrow
it
or something.
I can do it.
Yeah.
I know I can do it.
This is why I won't put myself through that.
You shouldn't.
No,
It's
I'm
bad.
not
It's
gonna do it. I
terrible.
took
Don't do it.
lessons.
Don't
My
do
dad
it.
got me lessons when I was a teenager. I have clubs. Josh actually uses my bag
Nice.
Yeah, my
because
bag
his
got moldy.
broke, and
Uh-oh.
I'll go out to the driving range. I'll go play putt, but you can't make me play a round of golf. Like you
yes.
couldn't. He can't even bribe me.
I need to make you guys go out
Presents,
to the
money,
disc golf
anything.
course because
That- we're going
yes.
Thursday. Next Thursday.
That's-
So I have a question. Did you ever get hurt in competition?
Yeah.
Like hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had some pretty severe concussions.
Kicks to the head.
Yeah, and they were always my coach was 6'4" and like 250 pounds.
Nice.
And if I didn't have anybody else to work with, that was when I was still in college. Like he'd spar with me and
Getting hit by a linebacker.
Yeah, and I just backed up.
More like a
and-
baseball bat, really.
Yeah, or like a tree.
Yeah.
It felt like I got hit with a tree, you know. And I had a pretty bad concussion after that. And there was another tournament where I got worked. It was my first tournament as an adult, which
Yeah.
is age division. It's 18 to 32 years old.
Ooh.
18 to 32.
18 to 32.
That
You go
is-
from a
that-
child to grown ass
Yes,
folks.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
that's
fighting.
that's a huge difference in strength.
What
Just-
is
and
power.
experience.
Yeah,
Yes.
that too.
Yes.
Ring time is key in martial arts. So you like 32, it's and now I'm like 30, so I'm like they're not old guys. But when I was 18, I was like, oh, I'm not afraid of these
I'm not
old
afraid
guys.
of these people.
You
They're-
know what I
they're
mean?
old.
Yeah.
But they have 15, 20
Yeah.
years of experience on you. And I fought this girl. Her
Crafty.
name is Sanaj Shabazi, and she's absolutely incredible. And she
a cool name.
cross trains in MMA, and she's made national team like 12 times.
Okay.
So that's just 12 years more of national team experience than even I had. And I was falling, and she cracked me in the face,
Ooh.
and I broke my nose. And I
Ooh.
like remember it, and I watched it. Recently, I found like all these old fight videos, and
tough.
I was like watching it. And I was like, "That's when I broke my nose."
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Is it weird to watch your old fights?
it's frustrating.
Yeah.
I get very like antsy and on the edge of my seat, and there's so many things I should have done in those moments, but I was the the type of person where my parents would record me on the old school
Yeah.
video camera with the tiny CDs in them. Like, I'm aging myself, but that's what.
Please.
Yeah.
You're talking Tina.
I know. I was about to say my
It's
parents
like-
had the big one
Yeah.
with the
Have
giant
you ever seen-
full-size VHS
Yeah.
It's like you ever
cassette
seen
in
National
there.
Lampoon's Christmas Vacation
Yep,
when
that's
he's
the-
watching on the reel in the attic and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
falls through?
yeah.
That's
Yes.
what we grew up with. So
I'm in
you're
good
fine.
company then. Yeah, I'm in good company. But I would be in the car on the way home watching.
How does it feel to watch yourself get knocked out?
Oh man, yeah.
Okay, so I wasn't knocked out cold. And
Okay.
technically my nose, I've never had a bloody nose before. So even when I broke my nose, it didn't bleed. So
Wow.
I didn't know that it was broken
Oh, that sucks.
until
It didn't hurt.
it hurt
Yeah.
like crazy, and I had black
Imagine.
eyes.
You're like, well, I just
got
in the
yeah,
face.
but it's you get rocked in the
Yeah.
face, and but then
whatever.
looking back, I'm like, man, I don't remember the end of that fight at all. Like
Can't-
I was,
it's
so
the
I've
reason for that.
never been like knocked out where I was unconscious, but I've
Yeah.
been out on my feet before.
Yeah.
Like I've definitely been walking and moving around and have no recollection of what happened in that time frame or what was
That's
going on.
that's technically getting knocked out.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah,
that's getting
a
knocked
TKO.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I was just listening to a podcast that Tyson did a couple months back
Yeah.
before his fight, and he said that he could never watch his old fights because he knew that would spark that.
Oh,
I'm
it makes
gonna-
me want to fight again every
I'm
time
gonna
I
get
watch
back.
it.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
get back into it, and there's nothing you can do to stop me, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just
Going
wondering if
through
it was
that.
the same kind of thing because you say you were getting antsy. Yeah. So you want to get out there, you want to train.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay.
I just know, and I think it's the same with Josh.
Sure.
That retired athlete, like, you watch it and you're like, I could get back into this and I could do this, especially because we're both young. So it would be very plausible and very doable. But
Sure.
I think, and he thinks about the time commitment for us both, because we're not going to go and just compete in some local
Right.
tournament and be like, yeah, it was so
Like, go
fun.
bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like we're going to go out and I'm like, I'm going to go to the Olympics. If that's what
Yeah.
I'm going to do,
Like,
that's
this
going
is
to be
what-
my goal.
this is goal.
Yeah.
I made a brief return to swimming in my 20s, and I was like that too. I went from, I'm just going to compete in a local masters tournament to I'm practicing twice a day for 5 hours
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
day. That's
yeah, for
exactly
sure.
what it turns into. But here's what you realize when you go back to that, even in your mid 20s, and now you're in your 30s trying to go back to that. You realize that your recovery time is
another-
way
It's different.
It's like
longer.
a
It's
two.
so different.
Yeah, you are sore and tired all the time because
Right.
you do not have the recovery of a teenager with elastic limbs anymore.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
I don't like Roy Jones Jr. said that he does everything by feel as far as training goes. Did you guys use like analytics, or was that even around whenever you were doing fights? Were you watching your opposition's fights and trying to gauge like that?
I started getting into scouting when I was in like my college years, and my coach, who is still out there, his name's Toby Oliver. He was very big into that. He was very big into sports outside of Taekwondo, so he understood the importance of doing little things like that. And that was the first time I'd ever done it. Yeah, I'd watch people fight if they were at the tournament or whatever, but in my head I was like, I don't want any preconceived notions. I'm good at adjusting. That's what I'm going to do. But for that, I had homework. I had to go and watch 2 international fights a week and take notes, and they had to be in my weight division and they had to be in my age group. And
But not your opponents necessarily.
But sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. If I knew, chances are I'm going to meet her if
Learn tendencies.
like in quarterfinals. Like I'm probably going to see her in quarterfinals, so I'm going to watch her fights and pick everything apart and that kind of thing. Because it's really easy to have a game plan going in, but you only have 6 minutes. It's 3 2-minute rounds. It's fast, and everything can change in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, one kick to the head, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
One kick to the head, you're out on your feet.
Or
Right.
one bad call from a ref
Oh,
or whatever, and all of a
sure.
sudden you're
Yeah.
down by 2 and there's 15 seconds left, and you have to go big or go home.
Okay, so
essentially.
explain. I'm glad you said something. Explain the scoring, because that
Okay.
seems points for.
It's a lot different now, and I do medical coverage for Taekwondo events now. Like I'm
Oh,
going
nice.
to Vegas to cover USAT Grand Prix out there. When am I leaving? The 10th, Thursday, soon.
Yeah.
And it's very different now. So now they're trying to make it a little bit more action packed. The scoring's much higher. But before, when I competed, it was 1 point for a body shot, 2 points for a headshot. Knockout is a game winner. And if you would have to almost drop somebody with a punch in order to score with a punch. And I was one of the few girls that punched. Like a lot of girls in my time, they didn't. But I think it's a great way to just mess with people mentally. Yeah, exactly. So I was mean, and I would do things like punch someone in the collarbone where I knew like the padding.
That would probably
stopped,
hurt you too.
No, we wear little like 4-ounce gloves, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
You could break somebody's collarbone like that.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
That they're
win.
going to have to stop because they
Yeah.
can't move.
That's a win.
Yeah.
That's a win
That
for
is
sure.
Exactly.
technical
Well, all that is
knockout.
fascinating. I did very little karate when I was little,
Ooh.
and then got
Same.
out of it
Yeah.
because I
She
started
always
playing.
makes fun of me when I
Because I
say
started playing baseball. Yeah, I started playing baseball and tennis. I was like, okay, this is fun.
I
So-
do think everybody should do at least a year of martial
Sure.
arts.
Oh,
in their
yeah,
life.
absolutely. I
think
did
it's
too.
super important. Yeah.
I did
Well,
2
I
years.
think everybody should do a year of waiting tables, but
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I think just working in food in general, waiting tables, yeah, probably.
it
I've never
teaches
done
humility.
that. Yes, no doubt.
Yes.
All right, so now, Josh, now that we've talked to your bodyguard,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost a kind of a usual story almost of how you got into
Yeah.
Taekwondo. It's like parents are looking for something for you to do as a
Right.
child. How does somebody get into, as opposed to that's like an established sport,
Right.
get BMX biking? That's not something you can just go to a local club and sign somebody up for, is it?
Right.
No. And at the time, it was just like a perfect timing of the sport being really popular on TV. ESPN was covering it all the time. All the major corporations were coming in. I was just listening to a podcast with Ryan Nyquist, who's 40 something now, late 40s, and he just stopped competing like last year. Now he's the Olympic coach for men and women.
Okay.
And he was just talking about, he's like, back then, like Dave Muir and I had the same agent, so we'll be in practice on the deck, and like our agent would come over, hey, sign this, slap the sticker on, all right, go out, do a backflip, go whatever. And just like the deals that were coming around back then, there was so much publicity, there was so much exposure because it was still new, and it just came out of a big lull in the early 90s.
The X Games started in the 90s, correct?
Yeah.
And
And,
that
that
was-
I think that's what helped pull it back out.
Did you guys watch the X Games and stuff in the early 2000s?
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
started.
I still watch 'em.
I watched them initially, and then that was about the time where I was graduating from college and getting out into my career, so I lost track of watching nearly as many sports as I used to. So I didn't keep up with that.
There's still
I mean,
some
I just-
polarizing figures.
Well, I
in
just
the
remember.
X
I
Games sports
remember
and stuff.
it when it first came out. Like I remember the first X Games.
Back when they had like speed climbing, downhill, what do they call it, like just skydiving, competitive snowboarding. Yeah, like back then.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Shaun White.
A lot of interesting
Changed
sports.
Well, that was
game,
before
stuff
any
like
of that was even in the Olympics
Yeah,
or
oh,
anything.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, but BMX was one of the initial sports that was involved with that. But even before X Games, I think skateboarding and BMX and anything that could be done on a ramp, even rollerblading,
Super popular
got
in the 90s.
really
Yeah,
popular
so
all of a
popular.
sudden. And then
'cause you could build it in your
ESPN saw
backyard.
that and
It
brought it
definitely
into
gained some exposure and then just started building momentum.
Yeah.
And then X Games hit, and then it was just like corporate sponsors, media everywhere.
Yeah.
These are athletes, and then it just kept booming.
But
And
how did you get into it,
so
though?
I got into it from when do you start playing t-ball? Like what grade is that? Like second grade?
Yeah,
First
like
grade, something like-
6.
Yeah, from when
7.
I was like 6. My dad still plays as many sports as he can at his
Yeah.
age, and so I was just playing everything. T-ball. I grew up in the bowling center.
We can't forget to talk about your
basketball.
bowling career,
Yeah.
by the way.
So I just did everything possible because
Yeah.
that was what was already in my family. And
Sure.
then I got into skateboarding around 12, 13 and rollerblading. And that was when CKY, like Bam Margera and all those guys were putting out
Yeah.
those videos before it became Jackass. So
Right.
skateboarding was like really cool, video games and all that. And then I saw BMX one day, and I saw an older cousin of mine with his friends, and I was like, that looks cool, and I don't
Yeah,
have to
it
worry
does
about
look
little
cool.
pebbles flinging me off my skateboard. I can go ride dirt jumps, and like it's transportation. So I
Sure.
was about 13. I got like a real BMX bike for Christmas one year, and it just came from being exposed to sports and athletics, and then watching CKY and Bam Margera and all those guys, and then getting to skateboarding, and then just BMX came along, and then it just took over my life by the time I got into 10th grade.
Man.
Okay.
So I just got a quick question. So when you're young and you're riding a bike, your quads don't hurt. But when you're old and riding a bike, your quads hurt. When'd your quads start hurting?
They started to hurt when I started training in the gym.
Yeah.
And which is not, it's more common now for action sports.
Sure,
So like
yeah.
I didn't step foot into a gym and like with intention till when we met.
Yeah.
Like 2016 or so, when I was going through, or 15 when I was getting ready for my ACL surgery. But yeah, no, what was interesting is the callus development on your hands.
yeah, I can
I remember my first year riding, my mom would put thick layers of gauze tape or gauze and then tape them, and then I put my gloves over it because it just hurt so bad and I wanted to ride so bad. But that was,
nice,
I remember,
mama.
one of the most painful things until injuries came. But yeah, my body, 13 years old, I was sore.
It's like nothing hurts.
And then
Yeah.
even up until last year, my body would feel fine.
Yeah.
Unless I had a heavy day in the gym or if I fell. And that's
It becomes an extension of them.
Yeah.
Right.
The bike,
it's,
yeah.
pain
it's-
tolerance
sure.
becomes elevated to the max where
Yeah.
she'd be like, rate this. I'm like, I don't know, just annoying. But like I have a broken rib or something
Yeah.
or like a torn ACL and I'm like, it hurts.
Or
but-
when you bite both sides of your tongue.
yeah,
off.
yeah.
So Dre wants to know what your first.
It was a Haro. It was a lower end Ryan Nyquist complete called the Back Trail.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a green bike.
Haro, yeah.
I
How
wish
long
I
did you
still
ride
had it. What's that?
How long did you ride it?
My stepfather re-welded it 3
I was
times.
gonna say, didn't you snap
I
it a
had
bunch?
it for 2 years, I think, mixing up the parts on and off. But yeah, I had the top and bottom tube of the head tube re-welded, and then the seat tube on the top tube, like where the seat and the top frame or top of the frame meet, re-welded. And then it got to a point where it's like, all right, doing chores, making some money now, I can get a new frame.
So So you just kept on reworking your bike? If you found like a frame that you liked or whatever, you would just keep putting new parts on it if something was broken. And...
Yeah, as things break or bend, or
That's
you
funny.
just you upgrade from the lower end, and then when those start breaking, when you're just trying to learn tricks, then you're like, all right. I remember my dad having to invest like $150 into me getting 3-piece crank arms for my pedals back then, which was crazy. If you had 3-piece cranks at that age, you were cool. But they were so much stronger because they weren't one piece where if you landed weird, they'd bend. You have to get a whole new set. It was like, oh, you could just take that out and swap it out. But it was just as I progressed, bike parts needed to progress as well because what I'm doing is a lot more pressure on them. They're braking, just trying to learn a trick, and then your bike's falling. Like, you're throwing your bike a lot more on accident, bailing out of tricks because you're progressing. So it just, over the years, I just got a brand new bike, but one thing at a time.
Yeah. Every little piece of equipment on a bike is preferential depending on athletes. Anything like from grips to the length of the handlebars
So the diameter of the same grip
Sure.
will have different diameter. Like it's just all
Exactly.
about feel.
Yeah.
We
This
had
is
Tommy DeBlasi on here a couple weeks ago, and he's the tire specialist for Martin Truex NASCAR. And they were saying the same thing about their cars. They have a car that they like, that they feel. They'll strip everything off that's not usable down and throw new parts on it because they still like the body or
Right.
the frame of it, whatever it may be. So it's interesting that you did the same thing.
So even
Yeah.
when I got sponsored, I didn't get new parts just to get new parts because as things broke in, I preferred that feel. And
Right.
you get brand new
Nicer.
parts. It's not broken in just the slightest bit. It feels weird.
Yeah.
So it was like, people were like, why don't you have 5 of the same bikes? It's
Yeah.
like, because they all feel different. It doesn't
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sense to me.
It's not the same
I'll
bike.
have spare frames, spare wheels, and things like that. But I'd always have one bike and then just parts laying around.
even like their tires trued differently. So like the tightness of the spokes are actually like people prefer different things. Like you all want it to be even, of course, but some guys like it a little bit more snug. and
When you get to
breezy.
that level of competition,
Yeah.
though, those little things make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with me in bowling now, which is just a fun activity, I'm like maybe a year into bowling again since I was like 14, which comes from my walking away from BMX because of the risk to my brain. And then just also, we were talking about earlier, like I'm 32 years old. I'm very capable of competing at that level.
Yeah.
But I walked away for my own health reasons.
Sure.
And then when I still was lingering around without competing for 3 years, I was still doing the same tricks at the same level every day and until to this day, training in the gym. So very capable. But it was like, I need to do something with this energy and competitive drive. But even getting into bowling of all things, like everything is a feel. Like the way the pitches are with the holes of the fingers, it makes your hand sit higher or lower and it has this grip. Like everything for me is feel. And it's just, I'm not even anywhere near competing in an amateur division. I'm just competing locally. But it has to feel.
You have that hyper competitive,
Yep.
hyper focus.
hyper focused mindset. Yeah. So there's no minor competition for you.
No.
It's all a major
And
competition that you
I love
wanna win.
individual sports. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's all about myself. It's a competing
Yeah.
with myself. When I'm on a team and there's 4 of us and then I show up well or they show up well and I don't or the roles are reversed, I get pissed off.
Yeah, I can dig that.
And even with golf, like I have no desire to compete any which level of golf, but I know what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hit that one good shot. I expect it.
Yeah.
And I think I introduced you to my buddy Jimmy Ferris. Him
Yep.
and I talked about this the other week of this delusional expectation of perfection. It raises your expectation to want to show up the best you can. Whether your goal is to go pro or not. It's no, I just expect this out of myself for various reasons.
What was the first trick you learned?
You're doing like little one-handers, one-footers, but the first real trick I learned was a bar spin.
What does that mean?
So you drop into the ramp, and we had this bowl. So the corners were mellow, so it wasn't like a steep transition. So we had this thing where we come in to the bowl corner, and we drop in on an angle, we'd carve around, and we go out the other corner, the other end. So it was like a mellower transition, and you hop up, and you spin the handlebars around 360 degrees.
So you let go, let it fly.
Yep.
That sounds fun.
So it's just bar spin. That was the first real trick besides one-hander, no footers, and combos of all those things.
All right, so X Games. I want to hear about this. 07, right?
09.
09 was your first X Games.
Yeah, my first pro contest was 07.
Right.
Yep.
Because you won your first one in 07.
No, I won the
09.
first contest April of 2009.
Right, April
X
2009.
Games was June 2009.
How was that experience? Because it looks crazy.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
where
wild.
was it, first of all?
It was back out in LA
Okay.
before they started moving around. I think they went to Austin for a couple of years,
Aspen,
Minneapolis.
too, didn't-
For the summer one. Yeah, it was still in LA.
Was this still an invite system? Like
yeah,
when you went
I
the
mean, I
same
got
way?
the email from
Yeah.
Matt Hoffman, and I was just like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah,
Like,
like,
it's
yeah,
not
it's
something
crazy.
They invite.
Yeah, that was gonna be
specific
something
riders
else.
They
and
used to have a
athletes,
qualification system, like they
Okay.
called the X Trials, and you had so many, you get points, but then that kind of when corporate kind of started going away and all the money and the contests, it was just like all the core BMX events, they'd have this system, a rating system with the committee of the X Games, and they would just go based upon a performance that year. They'd invite, and then, obviously like Mira was always invited, whether he wanted to or not. They'd be like, hey, do you want to ride?
Yeah.
There was obviously those, legends, but it was just based on your performance that year. If you were a new up and coming rider, like I was,
Sound like Olympic trials though. It's more about driving viewership, so it is a popularity thing.
So this is what my last year competing was super frustrating to me, because being biased, coming off an ACL rehab surgery, all that stuff, being on my bike for a total of 2 months, and then podiuming my first event in Croatia, and then out of the 5 stops, I rode 4 and qualified points wise to be top 10 overall. I thought that would give me an invite for the next year's qualification for X Games, because they started doing that again. They brought that back those years. We're going to have qualifiers. And then based on that, adding into the previous year's top 3 or 6, whatever they did, we'll have, a final X Games performance. And I didn't get an invite. But then I noticed that other riders that don't even compete in that division were getting invited.
Interesting.
But then they were on the same energy drink sponsor as some of the sponsors of the X Games.
Oh, that
And then
makes a
I
lot of
started to
sense.
notice it's becoming a show. It's not.
Yes.
There's definitely the people that belong there are there.
Yeah.
I didn't perform as well as some of those guys, but when you're looking at that discipline of competition, there was no reason I shouldn't have been invited to the qualifier. So I get a little salty, and I've seen that transition, like you mentioned. There is incentives for people that are sponsoring the event, and then brand managers are involved, and then you got all this and that going on. It's
It's
kind
about
of,
driving dollars.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Where did you place your first time?
At X Games. I think 14th out of 20.
Okay.
Funny story about that. I was influenced by one of probably top 3. I won't say his name for many reasons, but very good person, but just different perspective of partying and riding. And I just was like looking up to this icon that
Yeah,
I was
sure.
renting a room from his house, and then traveling with him. Vans was paying for all our flights, hotels, and just sending us everywhere. And then I got wrapped up in it, and like I showed up hungover to my debut X Games photo for my ID.
Oh.
I missed the first part of practice because I was about to throw up.
Nice.
And my only goal that year
Killer.
was to just not get last place.
Yeah.
Before all that.
Yeah.
And then somehow ended up doing 6 spots better,
Yeah,
even
sure.
though I was hungover the day before, missed practice and all that. Not proud of it, but I also rode
Lesson
with a massive
learned.
brain tumor that I didn't know about
Yep.
in X Games. So
Right.
Wow.
things could have been worse, and I'm very fortunate to have had that experience and to have learned from it.
So I want to get into that a little bit, but before we do, a couple other questions. One, is X Games even the big event for professional BMX, or are there other events that are bigger? That's just the one we hear about because it's promoted on ESPN.
So simply, no, X Games is not. I'm going to explain that in a second.
Sure.
But now that the Olympics have welcomed BMX freestyle, and BMX there's racing and freestyle. And I think Flatland is technically part of freestyle.
Okay.
Freestyle is the tricks.
Yeah.
Racing's racing. They've been in for the last 3 Olympics. So right now, we're not looking at Instagram or anything like that right now until we go home and watch the replay. This morning in France, they had one of the last World Cup championships, which is the last qualifier for points for
for the Olympic Games.
2 months is the Olympics now?
Yeah,
So they postponed it. So now Olympics is it. Now that we're in it and hopefully it sticks, that's going to be everything. Maybe not financially, but
also depending on the athlete too. There's also a huge core of BMX athletes that don't even consider themselves athletes.
They don't
They're
compete.
Like, I'm a rider.
That's,
you know,
different
this
discipline.
And that. Yeah,
that's the street riding
Yeah.
or even the dirt jumps. There's a trail scene.
Yeah.
Like these dudes live to dig dirt jumps and sculpt them. They're art in the woods.
But even some of the
and
guys
they
that
don't
ride,
compete.
like vert or big air and stuff like that, like they're like, X Games is my event. That's what I do.
If the Olympics had vert or mega ramp, they'd be there.
Exactly.
It's just so in action sports you have the competitors, then you have the disciplines, and then you have the non-competitors that do whatever. They film video parts mostly is like what they're in, or they don't care about exposure. They don't care about brands. They just dig trails and they ride. They drink beers, build a fire. It's
they
amazing.
camp out there for days and create like
fun.
beautiful and it's art. It really is. It's incredible.
So
Like,
X
it's
Games
many-
now, it's the most known because it's what's made BMX and action sports to the level it is today. It's what made Dave Muir a household name. TJ Lavin, Matt Hoffman, Tony Hawk, and like all these guys.
But they need to get their stuff together. So if you look at like an X Games BMX park course, it's completely different than if you go to the main event, which I would consider it fees before.
Well, that's what I was going to say
before the
next. There's other
Olympics. Yeah.
series that are action sports. So
Well,
X Games is owned by Disney.
Yeah,
right?
that's
like X Games is.
That's what I was
entertainment.
asking was, every sport has its premier venue. So Super Bowl for football and the World Series. What is that one event or what is the big one
I'd say
for
the
action
Feast World
It's
sports?
still X Games.
It's still X
because
Games. Okay,
only the people that are enthusiasts of BMX know about the FIS World Series, which is the last year I competed was in that series. Now it'll be the Olympics.
Sure.
If it sticks after this one. But it's still going to be X Games for some time. It used to be Do Tour, actually. Do Action Sports Tour. That was a 5-stop series around the country.
That you were
starting
on that for a while.
in 06, and then I got in 07 in the amateur series. So that was... Do Tour was probably the best event for action sports from my perspective because they had the Do Tour. That was the pro level. Then they had the Free Flow Do Tour, which was the amateurs. I got exposed in that. It gave me the ability to qualify for the open qualifiers for the pro level the next year. But then they went away with BMX for whatever reasons. But yeah, so it depends on, are you talking about the general population?
Right.
That's X Games.
Well, no, I mean for the
athletes, it's the FIS World Series.
Okay.
And now with the Olympics, FIS has turned into the World Championship Tour, World Cup Series. They have UCI events. So it's
because they're doing a point system.
yeah. So it's if your goal is the Olympics, it's any event involving points. If your goal is just to compete, FIS is the premier competitive in the freestyle discipline of park riding, like the ramps.
Yeah.
X Games could be for the dudes. Tom Dugan rode X Games one year, and he is not a competitive rider.
Yeah.
He just happens to meet the style that the course has changed into, which is a whole dramatic thing about the skateboarders taking charge and BMX being like, oh, we'll just let you guys do whatever because finance has always been an issue in BMX. So there's a lot of avenues there, but yeah. X Games is probably still the premier with Olympics shortly taking over.
So what events did you compete in?
All the core events I could go to in BMX, people probably never heard of them. But then there was...
What are those?
So like Jomo Pro was the first contest I won. It was in Joplin, Missouri. And it was at this facility that was like a church-ran action sports, like one of the best public parks back in the day, as well as like basketball court, like a daycare and like all these things. But it was in Joplin, Missouri. They called it the Jomo Pro contest. That's what kind of put my name on the map competitively.
Let me rephrase the question. There's different events in BMX, like there's ramp, right? There's half pipe, or
so I competed in park.
Okay.
And I did a couple contests in dirt.
Okay.
But that was never really my focus. Mine was like the ramps.
So park is
quarter pipes, the box jumps,
The one where they're flowing around all over the
Doing
place, or
backflips
like
and
in the
spinning.
bowl, like at X Games.
So the bowl,
Sometimes
like
the
I think of the bowl, I think of an empty pool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
like
that is.
Right. Yeah.
But then I've seen the other one where they've got the rail set up, or you're going downstairs, or
So that
you know,
depends on the
that's-
discipline. That's more
like
skateboarding or the street aspect of
Yeah,
BMX. So
that's
what
what-
I wrote in
Yeah.
is like you have the traditional quarter pipe, the big box jump in the middle. You see the backflips, so the spins, the tail whips, and then you have like angled transition ramps and the spine, which is the up and down ramp.
Yeah.
But then you'd have the bowl, which is a whole different discipline. Then you have the half pipe, which
Right.
is its own
It's crazy.
thing.
This
and
is
mega
all
ramp, so-
freestyle. Like
Yeah,
that's,
it's
that's what I
super
love about
confusing,
it.
and I
Like,
think that's
there's
one of
so
the.
I think
many
that's
things.
dope.
I think it's one of the drawbacks
Shows
to
creativity.
the sport
Yes.
expanding, though, because there's within BMX you have freestyle, which has 8 categories,
Yeah.
and then you have racing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Racing is so simple, and the family can do it
Yes.
together, and they have so much coverage. They've been treating themselves like athletes for years.
Yes.
But then in BMX freestyle, you have: are you a street rider? Are you a dirt rider? Are you a ramp rider? Are you a park rider?
Yes.
Are you a vert
All of
rider? A
that.
mega ramp rider? Or
Yeah.
are you this or that? And it's just it's got so complex that people don't even know, why did that guy win and not him? Because he or she did that and they did this, and they fell and they still won, but that guy did all. It's just there's so much to it. It's not simply that guy crossed the line first, that guy or
Right.
that girl got the ball in the hoop more times.
Yeah, it's easier to understand.
So complex.
It's transitioning from like way of life into sport though, as
Yeah.
far as the public view. And it was really like being an athletic trainer working with BMX. It was tough because being at the training facility where Josh and I met, I would encounter athletes like Josh and athletes like Daniel Dares and Nick Bruce and Daniel Sandoval, who are all like really huge competitors in BMX. And then you'd have the guys where I was like, hey, you probably shouldn't just drink Coca-Cola while you're riding. Yeah. Take your cigarette
Wow.
breaks further away from the children,
Right.
please. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so it's like,
That was mostly the Russians that came.
Nah.
over. They just chain smoked all day. And I think
fair.
it helped them. I don't know. Like
or
they-
just like the core guys from North Carolina that just came out. They drove up or drove down from Virginia Beach.
you got to
or whatever,
remember,
and
BMX
so
had this
there's a whole
stigma
different spectrum.
with making money and selling out.
Yeah.
And Dave Miro, who like, if it wasn't for him, the sport I don't think would be where it is today in
Yeah.
terms of like publicity, money, and opportunity.
Sure.
But even back then, he was taking X, Y, and Z deals, and the core riders were like, "Oh, we're just doing it for the fun, but it's not cool to be broke." But like, you're selling out. And actually, Ryan
Like,
shared
Slim
it on the
Jim.
podcast a
Yeah.
little bit about how Miro was insecure about that because he gave everything to BMX. Like he lived for it. There's no doubt about it. He loved it. But then he felt like he got so much negativity from like the core aspect of riders because, oh, you're selling out. And it's no, I'm doing what I love. Why not
making
get
it-
500
making-
from Slim
yeah.
Jim to
And
wear
his
a sticker on
family's
my
set
helmet?
up
You
now.
know,
Right.
like-
Yeah.
And now he's got his family's taken care of. You know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes,
Oh.
so, yeah.
All right, so I know that you guys have a hard stop. We're very thankful of you guys
Yeah.
Thank
for
you for
coming
being
in.
here.
Some of your Monday to spend with us. It was great and very enlightening, and the stories are just insane. And I'm sure they just keep coming and coming, which is why we need you on again. For myself, Clint, Mr. Dre over here on the Behind the Curtain, and Dom, thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
All
you
right.
all.
And until next time, folks, we are the Schmoes. We'll see you.
Cut to the theme music.